Hello and welcome to English Spark Official. I'm Zayden, joined as always by Alara.
Hey everyone! We're so excited about today's topic.
Okay, let's really unpack this. Because linguists actually estimate that in a normal, everyday conversation, you have about 200 milliseconds to respond to someone.
Right.
200 milliseconds before the silence starts to feel, socially awkward. Right. That is literally the blink of an eye.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing. And if you are standing there translating grammar rules in your head or like flipping through a mental dictionary trying to match a subject to a predicate, you've already lost the moment.
The conversation is just gone.
Exactly. It's gone. And you were left standing there feeling completely paralyzed.
And the psychological pressure of that 200 millisecond window is immense. Human beings are socially wired to interpret silence as rejection or confusion.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, absolutely. When you freeze in that gap, your brain actually detects a social threat, which spikes your cortisol level.
Which is the stress hormone.
Right. And that stress hormone actively blocks cognitive recall. It makes it even harder to remember the vocabulary you literally just spent hours studying.
So you're basically sabotaging yourself.
Exactly. It is a vicious, self-defeating cycle that, frankly, every single language learner eventually hits.
Well, we are going to break that cycle today. So welcome to a deep dive that is specifically tailored for you, especially if you are hovering around that A2 level of language learning.
Which is a really frustrating plateau to be on.
Oh, it's the worst. Because you know enough vocabulary to survive on paper. You can totally pass a written test.
But speaking is a totally different game.
Right. The moment you step out into the real world and a native speaker asks you a fast question, your brain just shuts down entirely.
It just goes blank.
So our mission today is to completely rewire how you approach speaking. We want to get you out of your head and into the actual flow of human interaction.
And we have some incredible source material for this.
We do. We are basing this on a fascinating document we recently got our hands on from English Spark Official. It is a scripting blueprint titled Automaticity Secrets: How to Speak Without Thinking Fast.
And we should probably clarify what this document actually is, right? Because the context is pretty crucial here.
Yeah, go for it.
So we aren't looking at a traditional language textbook or a grammar guide or anything like that. This is actually an internal instructional playbook.
Like a manual for teachers.
Exactly. It's a blueprint designed for content creators and educators to script out language learning audio. So it's technically a set of rules for teaching.
Right.
But when you look closely at the constraints and directives in this playbook, it reveals this brilliant cognitive strategy.
What's fascinating here is what they're actively trying to avoid, I think.
Yes. The overarching mandate for these creators is to transition the learner away from rigid robotic knowledge and into fluid, natural conversation.
So if the ultimate goal is this concept of automaticity, speaking without thinking fast, we have to start by completely dismantling the way you've probably been taught up until now.
Which is a scary thought for a lot of learners.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because the playbook explicitly bans its own creators from using any robotic or repetitive phrasing. It literally forbids anything that sounds like a textbook.
Which makes sense.
But wait, if we are telling you, the listener, to completely ignore textbook English, aren't we just telling you to throw away your whole foundation?
It feels like that.
Right. Don't you need the textbook rules to know how the language is actually built?
Well, textbooks are fantastic for developing accuracy, sure, but they are absolutely terrible for developing speed.
Why is that?
Because they force your brain to approach language like a mathematical equation to be solved. Let's look at the cognitive mechanism of a textbook learner in that 200 millisecond window we talked about.
Okay, break it down for me.
So someone asks you a question. Your brain first has to decode their sounds. Then it pulls up the blueprint of an English sentence, subject, auxiliary verb, main verb, object.
Right, like assembling a piece of furniture.
Exactly like that. Then it searches for the correct tense. Then it checks the conjugation of the verb to match the pronoun.
That is so much mental math.
It's exhausting. And by the time your brain has run that whole academic algorithm, the person you were talking to has already assumed you didn't understand them.
They're already walking away.
Right. So automaticity is the complete bypass of that academic algorithm.
It is kind of like reading a 400-page physics manual on how to ride a bicycle.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right, because the manual is going to give you incredible, precise data. It will explain the exact angle of momentum you need to maintain upright posture.
The gyroscopic effects and all that?
Exactly. It will detail the distribution of your body weight over the frame, the friction of the tires, and you can memorize that manual cover to cover.
You could ace a written exam on bicycle physics.
100%. You get a perfect score.
Yeah.
But if you try to actively calculate those physics equations while you are sitting on the seat and pedaling, you are going to crash right into a mailbox.
Going down immediately. Because the human brain simply cannot consciously process multiple complex abstract rules while simultaneously coordinating rapid physical movement.
It's just too much load on the processor.
Exactly. You can't pedal fast until the physical motion of balancing and steering becomes completely divorced from the underlying theory. And language is exactly the same way.
That makes so much sense.
So when the instructional playbook demands a friendly, casual, modern style and strictly prohibits robotic language, it is acknowledging a core truth.
Which is?
Native speakers do not speak in perfectly parsed, grammatically flawless textbook sentences. We just don't.
We really don't. We speak in chunks of meaning. We rely on these established rhythms and patterns that we just fire off automatically.
Right.
Let's break that down with an everyday example, because I really want you, the listener, to see how this applies to your daily life.
Let's do it.
Okay, imagine you were opening your textbook to chapter 1, the greeting section. The book is going to give you this grammatically pristine sentence. How do you do today? I am very well, thank you.
I can hear the robot voice saying it.
It's technically perfect.
Oh.
Every single word serves a clear grammatical function.
Right, but if you attempt to construct that sentence word by word in your head while walking past a coworker in the office, you will be 3 desks away before you finish the word today.
Yes. The interaction is literally over before you even finish the mental calculation. Automaticity looks completely different.
How so?
Automaticity is the reflexive, fast-paced rhythm of a simple, hey, how's it going? Or just, good, you.
Which is so much faster.
Way faster. Because when you use a phrase like, how's it going, you aren't actually thinking about the grammar.
Not at all.
You aren't analyzing why the continuous verb going is being used to describe your existential state of being.
You certainly aren't breaking down the contraption of how is into hows.
Right. You're simply deploying the entire phrase as a single automatic unit of sound. It is a reflex. It's not a calculation.
And developing those reflexes requires a fundamental shift in how you view your own vocabulary. Because, the natural assumption that most learners make is that speaking faster requires knowing more complex words.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone thinks it's a numbers game.
Right. They think fluency is just about sheer volume. Like if they just memorize 3,000 more words, the speed will naturally follow.
But the blueprint says otherwise.
It completely contradicts that. The playbook we are analyzing gives its creators a very strict directive. It states, and I'm quoting here, start with simple vocabulary, then gradually increase difficulty.
Okay, but it also says sentences must remain clear, smooth, and easy to follow.
Exactly. It's about the flow, not the complexity.
I have to challenge that approach, though. I mean, if we are telling you, as an A2 learner, to just rely on the simplest, most basic vocabulary and actively avoid complex words, aren't we capping your potential? Aren't we basically guaranteeing that you are going to sound uneducated or childish in a professional environment?
That is such a common fear.
Right. Because if you only use simple words, how do you express a truly complex thought?
You are touching on one of the biggest psychological hurdles for language learners, which is the fear of sounding simple.
Nobody wants to sound stupid.
Of course not. But let's look at what the playbook actually mandates when its creators hit a difficult concept. It strictly tells them to avoid complex academic jargon without explanation.
Oh, interesting.
The rule is any difficult word must be explained naturally in conversation.
Wait, really? So you have to talk around it?
Exactly. This isn't just a formatting rule for an audio script. This is the literal definition of circumlocution.
Circumlocution. Okay, big word there.
Right, ironical. But it is the single most powerful tool you can use to maintain conversational momentum. Flow is always more important than vocabulary size.
Okay, so walk us through the actual mechanics of this circumlocution. How does talking around a word help you speak faster?
Sure.
It seems like it would take way more time, not less time, to use 5 simple words instead of 1 perfect, complex word.
It takes more syllables, perhaps, but it takes drastically less cognitive processing time.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Let's set up a scenario. Imagine you are trying to tell a story to a friend, and you desperately want to convey the concept of being frustrated.
A very common feeling.
Right. But you are hovering around that A2 level, and frustrated is a B2 level word. It hasn't made it into your automatic reflexes yet.
So what happens?
A learner trapped in the academic mindset will hit that missing word like a literal brick wall. They will stop speaking entirely.
The dreaded pause.
Yeah, they will stare at the ceiling, panic, and frantically search their mental dictionary while that 200 millisecond window closes and the conversation just dies.
Oh, man, I know that feeling so intimately. You were standing there going, I felt. And you can see the other person physically leaning in, just waiting.
It's agonizing.
It is. You're mentally scrolling through flashcards that just aren't there.
But a learner utilizing circumlocution never hits that brick wall because they never stop moving.
You just bypass it.
Exactly. They realize they don't have the word frustrated, so they instantly pivot to the simple A2 vocabulary that you have.
What would they say instead?
They say something like, I felt really bad because I wanted to do it, but I couldn't.
Oh, wow. I felt really bad because I wanted to do it, but I couldn't. That is incredibly smooth.
It works perfectly, right?
Yeah, you have completely communicated the exact emotional state of frustration. You kept the sentence clear and easy to follow.
And most importantly, you didn't force the other person to wait in awkward silence. You maintained the momentum of the interaction.
That momentum is everything.
And the irony is that native speakers use circumlocution constantly. We forget words in our native language all the time.
All the time, like when I forget the word for colander.
Yes. You don't freeze and end the conversation, right?
No, I just say, hand me the bowl with the holes for the pasta.
Exactly. The instructional playbook is effectively telling us that fluency at an early stage isn't about the sheer volume of words you know. It is about your agility with the words you already possess.
You are building the habit of continuous, unbroken speech.
Spot on.
Okay, that makes sense on a strategic level. Like, give yourself permission to sound simple so you can keep the momentum going. But strategy is kind of useless without physical execution.
Very true.
How do we physically train our brains and our mouths to actually move that fast? Because the playbook doesn't just offer philosophy, right? It demands a very specific mechanical toolkit for its learners.
It does. It mandates the inclusion of 3 specific learning features.
Right. It says repetition of key phrases, shadowing practice using the cue repeat after me, and listening focus cues using the cue listen carefully.
And we really need to spend significant time analyzing that second feature, the shadowing practice.
This is so misunderstood.
Highly misunderstood. The instruction to use repeat after me is often seen by learners who grew up with old school audio cassette programs as, well, boring.
Which is exactly what I want to push back on. Honestly, when I hear shadowing or repeat after me, I immediately picture sitting in a language lab in high school, just passively parroting a robotic voice on a tape.
Wearing those terrible headphones?
Yes, it feels completely mindless. How does simply repeating a phrase actually rewire your brain to speak fast without thinking?
Well, it feels mindless only if you misunderstand the physical reality of language.
What do you mean?
Shadowing, when executed correctly, is not passive parroting. It is a highly active, intense neuromuscular workout.
Neuromuscular workout. I love that phrasing.
Because that's what it is. Let's look at what is happening inside your mouth when you speak your native language.
Okay.
Over the course of your entire life, your brain has built this massive, heavily insulated neural highway to your jaw, your lips, your tongue, and your vocal cords.
So it's all muscle memory.
Complete muscle memory. Your muscles know exactly where to snap, how to curve, and how much air to release to make your native sounds. It requires zero conscious thought.
You're essentially an Olympic athlete in the specific gymnastics of your native language.
Precisely. And when you attempt to speak a new language, especially at speed, you are actively fighting decades of established muscle memory.
Oh, because your mouth wants to move the old way.
Exactly. Your mouth is trying to use the physical movements of your native language to produce English sounds.
That makes so much sense. That is why you stumble. That is why a simple sentence feels so clunky and exhausting to say.
Right. Your brain might know the English grammar, but your muscles literally do not know the choreography yet.
Wow. So when the playbook demands repetition of key phrases alongside shadowing, it isn't asking you to just memorize the definition of the words.
Not at all.
It is forcing you to do physical reps. It's no different than going to the gym to do bicep curls, except you are doing like tongue and jaw curls.
That is the exact perfect way to look at it.
So you listen to the native speaker and you immediately mirror their speech. You match their exact speed, their exact rhythm, their exact intonation.
You say the phrase, 20, 30, 50 times.
Until the physical act of producing those specific English sounds requires zero conscious effort.
Because you are building a new neuromuscular highway that bypasses the brain's translation toll booth entirely.
The translation toll booth, that's brilliant.
And this physical training connects directly to the playbook's third mandatory feature, which is the listening focus cues.
The strict instruction to tell the audience to listen carefully.
Right. Because you cannot physically reproduce a rhythm that your ear hasn't actually perceived in the first place.
Tuning your ear to the frequency of native speech is a huge hurdle.
A massive one.
A lot of A2 learners get incredibly frustrated because the English they read in a textbook looks absolutely nothing like the English they hear on the street.
Because textbooks present language as isolated, pristine blocks of text with spaces between every single word.
Right, like each word is in its own little box.
But spoken English is a fluid stream. It's full of connected speech, reductions, and assimilated sounds. Native speakers don't articulate every consonant.
No, we blend words together to save physical effort.
Exactly. A textbook tells you to say, "What are you gonna do?" But a native speaker running for a train says, "What you gonna do?"
What you gonna do? It's basically one word.
If you are only listening for perfectly enunciated textbook words, your brain will reject "what you gonna do" as pure gibberish.
So the listen carefully cue in the playbook is actually a psychological trigger. It tells you to stop reading the language with your eyes and start perceiving the actual acoustic reality with your ears.
Yes, you have to notice how the words bleed into one another.
You have to hear the dropped consonants and the shortened vowels.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess once you can hear that physical rhythm, your mouth can begin the shadowing process to replicate it.
That's the sequence. And the playbook is incredibly intentional about where this neuromuscular training is meant to be deployed.
What do you mean?
Well, the target audience definition is probably the most telling constraint in the entire document. It explicitly states that the content must be designed for audiences in English-speaking environments.
Oh, wow. That drastically raises the stakes of everything we've talked about.
It does. It changes the whole context.
Because we aren't just discussing studying English in a quiet, climate-controlled classroom in a non-English-speaking country, where the only consequence of speaking slowly is, like, getting a B- on a Friday quiz.
Right.
We are talking about the reality for you, the listener, who steps out of your front door and is immediately enveloped by a world of native speakers talking at full speed all day, every day.
It's intense.
This isn't academic exercise anymore. This is high-stakes, daily survival.
And how does the playbook equip you for that survival? By demanding the use of real-life examples, relatable situations, and practical usage.
Oh, so no more textbook theory.
Exactly. It forbids complex academic scenarios because discussing macroeconomic theory doesn't help you navigate a crowded subway station or order a meal.
Very true. Let's actually apply this. Let's construct a common high-pressure scenario where practicing fast, automatic speech is an absolute necessity.
I love this. Let's do it.
Let's take the classic gauntlet of urban survival, ordering coffee in a busy cafe during the morning rush hour.
The ultimate test of automaticity.
It really is. I want to really paint the picture of why this situation causes so much panic for learners.
Set the scene.
Okay, you are standing in line. There are 8 frustrated commuters behind you, checking their watches and tapping their feet. The espresso machines are screaming, the milk frother is hissing, there's loud background music playing.
Sensory input alone is overwhelming.
It's totally overwhelming. And finally, you get to the front of the line, and the barista looks at you and fires off a greeting at absolute top speed.
Hey, the 20 cans started for you?
It sounds like one long word.
Exactly. And if your brain is still operating in the textbook algorithm, you are basically dead in the water.
Because you're trying to mentally separate what can get started for you into individual words.
Right. You're trying to process their syntax and formulate a grammatically complete response like, "I would like to order a large coffee with milk, please."
And by the time you get to the word order, the barista is already looking past you to the next customer.
Yep. The pressure spikes, the cortisol floods your system, and your brain completely dumps all your vocabulary.
It's the freeze response. You end up just pointing at the menu, holding up one finger and grunting, coffee, milk, and you walk away feeling totally defeated.
It happens all the time. But let's replay their exact scenario using the automaticity secrets.
Yes, let's apply the rule to keep sentences clear, smooth, and easy to follow.
In this high-pressure environment, a smooth, functional chunk of language is your ultimate survival tool. You do not need a complex, beautiful sentence.
You just need to get the coffee.
Exactly. You need a fast, pre-shadowed phrase. Can I get a large coffee with milk, please? Done.
Just can I get?
Right. You don't analyze the grammar of can I get, you just use it as a vehicle to deliver your order. Fast, simple speech beats slow, perfect grammar every single time in the real world.
It really does. Let's look at another incredibly common scenario, which is the quick hallway greeting with a coworker.
Oh, this one is tricky.
It's so tricky. You are walking down a long corridor to the printer. A colleague is walking the opposite direction. You have exactly 3 seconds of overlapping space as you pass each other.
The social pressure of this tiny interaction is actually massive.
It's terrifying because the hallway greeting is this fascinating cultural ritual. If your colleague smiles and says, "Hey, how was your weekend?"
And you pause to mentally construct the past tense of your activities.
My weekend was very satisfactory. I did go to the...
By the time you find the verb, they are already 4 steps past you.
And that long pause in this specific cultural context feels deeply awkward.
It really does.
It signals hesitation, a lack of social grace, or even coldness.
Which is exactly why having those shadowed, repeated key phrases ready to fire automatically is so crucial.
You need them loaded in the chamber.
Right. If you have done your neuromuscular reps, you don't even have to think about what you actually did on the weekend. You just deploy the automatic social script to maintain the rhythm of the interaction.
You just smile and say, "It was great," really relaxing you.
Yes, you kept the momentum going, you fulfilled the social contract, and you survived the interaction without a spike in cortisol. Because practical usage strips away the academic anxiety. Language transforms from a test of your intelligence into a functional tool.
Like a key unlocking a door.
Exactly. The playbook focuses on these relatable situations because that is where automaticity matters most. It isn't about being eloquent, it is about being connected and present in the moment.
But, those are short interactions.
Yeah.
A 3-second hallway passing, a 10-second copy order.
Right.
What happens when the conversation isn't just a brief exchange? What happens when you actually have to sustain an interaction?
That's the next level.
Because a conversation isn't a monologue. You can have your coffee order perfectly shadowed and memorized, but what happens when the barista hits you with an unexpected follow-up question?
Like, do you want room for cream in that?
Exactly. Or what if the coworker in the hallway stops walking and starts telling you a long, fast story about their weekend? How do you stay active in the conversation when you can't build fast sentences yet?
This is where we look at the playbook's rules for the interactive loop.
Okay, tell me about the interactive loop.
So the instructions for creating the audio script mandate that both speakers must be actively speaking, creating a balanced dialogue.
But how do they achieve that?
Crucially, it requires the use of interruptions, reactions, agreement, and strictly says to avoid long monologues.
But wait, how does an A2 learner who is struggling to string 3 words together quickly maintain a balanced dialogue with a native speaker who's talking at 100 words a minute?
It feels impossible, right?
It feels completely impossible to not just stand there, nodding silently, looking terrified.
The secret to surviving that imbalance lies right there in the playbook's instructions. Reactions and agreement.
Oh, okay.
Using short, active reactions is the ultimate cheat code for conversational flow.
Cheat code how?
When the other person is speaking fast, you do not have to sit there quietly waiting for your turn to deliver a massive, complete sentence. You can pepper their monologue with active listening sounds.
It's like saying, right, "Oh, wow, no way, makes sense, got it."
Exactly.
I want to dive deep into why that works, because it seems almost too simple.
It's deceivingly simple.
Are we just teaching learners to fake it? Like, if I just say wow and right while someone talks, how is that actually helping me learn?
You aren't faking it. You are utilizing a linguistic tool called backchanneling.
Backchanneling.
Psychologically and practically, backchanneling achieves 2 vital goals. First, it fulfills the playbook's mandate for a natural, human-like conversation.
Because that's what native speakers do.
Right. You are constantly signaling to the speaker that you are engaged, that you hear them, and that you are actively participating in the shared rhythm of the exchange.
And what's the second goal?
Second, and vastly more important for your cognitive load, it buys you processing time.
The processing time, yes.
It's a lifesaver.
If someone is telling you a fast story about a problem at work and you drop a quick, "Oh, wow, really?" it gives your brain an extra 2 to 3 seconds to parse the vocabulary they just used.
Without the conversation grinding to an awkward halt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are keeping the pace of the conversation fast and energetic, even if you aren't the one doing the heavy lifting of building complex sentences.
Because the academic textbook format trains learners to view conversations sequentially.
Wait, sequentially?
Yeah. Person A speaks a full, perfectly formed paragraph. Person A finishes. Person B speaks a full, perfectly formed paragraph.
Which is so robotic.
It is polite, rigid, and entirely unnatural. Real human conversation, as the playbook acknowledges with its call for interruptions, is messy.
It overlaps. It is chaotic.
Teaching learners to use natural interruptions and constant agreement mimics the reality of human interaction.
It allows an A2 learner to punch above their weight class, basically.
Absolutely. Staying active in a high-speed environment simply by managing the rhythm.
It is like jumping into a spinning double Dutch jump rope.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the one spinning the ropes. You just have to find the rhythm and hop in with a quick right, or exactly, to keep the ropes moving without tripping anyone up.
That's a great way to visualize it.
So we have dismantled the academic algorithm. We have embraced the vocabulary escalator through circumlocution. We have outlined the neuromuscular workout of shadowing. And we've unlocked the cheat code of backchanneling.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. And the final structural requirement of the playbook dictates that the content must end with a practice assignment and a motivational closing line.
Which is brilliant pedagogy.
So we are going to fulfill that exact requirement right now. We are giving you, the listener, a practice assignment to completely transform how you approach your English tomorrow morning.
Because knowledge is only valuable when it is internalized and applied. If you just listen to this and go back to staring at flashcards, nothing will change.
Exactly. So here is your assignment. I challenge you to pick one specific, highly relatable situation that you face every single week.
Keep it grounded in reality.
Right. Maybe it is ordering that coffee. Maybe it is introducing yourself at the start of a weekly Zoom meeting. Maybe it is asking the attendant at the train station which platform you need.
Whatever gives you the most anxiety.
Yes. Take that one specific scenario and apply the automaticity secrets. First, strip out the complexity. You do not need impressive vocabulary to survive the train station.
You really don't.
Find the absolute simplest, smoothest A2 vocabulary you can use to achieve your goal.
Flow over flash.
Second, write out the simple phrase you need, and then begin your shadowing practice. Do not read it silently. Silent reading does absolutely nothing for your muscle memory.
You have to engage the vocal cords.
Say it out loud. Repeat it over and over, mimicking the speed and connected sounds of a native speaker until your jaw, lips, and tongue can produce the phrase automatically.
Train your mouth like an Olympic athlete.
And third, pick 3 simple reaction words like got it, perfect, and thanks so much, and have them loaded, ready to fire.
Your backchanneling toolkit.
Exactly. Use them to keep the interactive loop flowing smoothly, no matter what unpredictable thing the other person says back to you.
And as for the motivational closing line required by the playbook, I want you to remember that achieving automaticity is not a measure of your innate intelligence.
Oh, that's such an important point.
Stumbling over your words is not an academic failure. Fluency is simply a physical habit.
It's physical.
It is built through the relentless physical repetition of key phrases and the courage to engage in the messy, overlapping rhythm of real human conversation. You already possess the necessary building blocks. You are simply learning how to assemble them at a faster speed.
By unpacking this internal instructional playbook, we've essentially uncovered a masterclass on the physical and psychological realities of speaking a language.
We really have.
We've learned that the textbook trap creates a cognitive bottleneck, forcing you to calculate when you should be reacting. We've learned that you must ride the vocabulary escalator, relying on simple words and circumlocution to maintain your momentum when you forget a word.
Flow is king.
Flow is king. We've learned that shadowing is a heavy physical workout for your facial muscles, not a passive listening exercise. And we've learned how to deploy active reactions and backchanneling to survive high-speed real-life environments without freezing up.
It's a completely new toolkit.
You have taken a massive step today just by diving deep into the mechanics of your own learning journey. You aren't just memorizing a physics manual about bicycles anymore. You are finally learning how to balance and pedal.
The strategies we have discussed today offer a completely new paradigm for understanding what it actually means to be fluent.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought.
Right. I want you to consider this as you go out into the world. If the secret to automaticity is relying on simple vocabulary, utilizing natural reactions, and prioritizing unbroken momentum above perfect grammar, What if the ultimate sign of fluency isn't the vast number of complex words you have memorized, but rather the awkward silences you can confidently skip over?
Oh, wow. The awkward silences you can confidently skip over. That completely flips the script on what it means to be a successful speaker.
It really changes the goalpost.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep practicing, keep doing your neuromuscular reps, embrace those messy conversations, and always stay curious. We'll see you next time.